So,
for having me.
because things are so depressing, well, not everything's so depressing, we thought
A lot
we'd
of things
start
are.
with two things that aren't depressing. Tell us about First Night and Toys for Tots.
Yes, we are thick in the middle of holiday preparations at the city with two beloved traditions. First Night is going to have a little bit of a revamp this year because we're hosting on the newly renovated City Hall Plaza. So we
Oh.
encourage everyone to come check that out. It will be beautiful and fun and family friendly throughout the entire day. So I look forward to seeing everyone there. And on the Toys for Tots side, again, this is something that we bring the entire community into every year. We are looking for donations and support for folks who might want to bring an unwrapped toy to your local fire station or police station or any city spaces, where we will then collect everything, sort of sort it by age, and then find ways to get it to families and kids who could use a little extra love and cheer this season.
So they can show up at a fire station or police station
Yes,
in
there
the
will be
city
boxes there, and you can just drop
unwrapped
that
and
off.
just drop them off. That's great.
How many trees have you lit?
I think I'm about just at 40 now. Yeah, and we did the big menorah, the going up very high, 20-some feet menorah. We have a couple more menorahs this week. I did a pirate ship. I did a trellis. I did the Comav Mall.
How hard is it to pretend you're still having a good time by the 37th?
I love it.
I
I
knew
mean,
she'd
each
say that.
countdown is exciting in its own way, and you just get the chance to catch up with families, and sometimes especially for the little ones, that is their moment that they remember. They get to update me about their lives and everything that's happening, so it's beautiful.
You know, we're going to get into a lot of city business and stuff like that, but you also have a connection to one of the major controversies in the country around the 3 university presidents who testified in front of Congress the other day, and were asked that question about genocide by Representative Stefanik. Apparently, the Harvard Corporation has unanimously decided that they will support Claudine Gay continuing as president of Harvard. Did they make the right decision? I mean, you went to Harvard, we should say, for those who don't know. Did they make the right decision in your estimation?
So I come to this situation with sort of both of my hats on, right? As someone who's an alumna and really, has had some experience through the institution and the university, and then someone who is now interacting with Harvard in a different way and working on projects together and looking to partner and ensure that the resources there are connecting directly to Boston neighborhoods. I support the statements and the actions of the board in very carefully deliberating and making sure that they're, as the president apologized herself, and recognizing that every characterization in a public role makes a difference. The words that we choose matter, and I also have a sense of what it's like to take just a short clip out of a very hostile, long situation, and I think she's been in there for just a very, very short time, and that actions speak louder than words. Words, of course, matter as well, but we need to make sure that all of us are taking action to ensure the safety of all of our community members, to very loudly and unapologetically condemn the hatred and violence that has taken place and that may threaten and intimidate our community members locally. And I look forward to continuing to partner with the university, with all of our universities, including Harvard and MIT, on how to make sure we are creating opportunity in those kinds of spaces here in Boston.
The number, if you want to text or call the mayor directly, is 877-301-8970.
We talked to you a lot about the Boston police contract, and you're getting some credit for some reforms. What were the ones that mattered to you?
This was a big deal, and it took a long time. The city of Boston has now done something that no other city has, and that we have not been able to do in the past, and we're not done yet. We came after a year and a half of negotiations with the union who represents the vast majority of our sworn police officers, the Patrolmen's Association. We have agreed to a contract that is now before the Boston City Council. They, I believe, still might be in their hearing right now on that. It adds a cost of living increase that is consistent with what our other municipal unions have gotten. This is now a partially retroactive contract because our officers have worked since 2020 through the pandemic with all the changes since without a contract and without those adjustments. It also makes some very significant changes to removing arbitration as a loophole that was used to avoid or override disciplinary decisions of the commissioner in a certain list of serious criminal acts, just to really put our money where our mouth is in ensuring that our officers are held to the highest standards of accountability for those who are sworn to protect and serve. It also makes some changes to the detail system when you see a major construction project or something happening in the public street that you need someone to guide traffic around it, ensure people are safe. It makes some changes so that we can distinguish the ones that are high priority, very risky, have a big impact on traffic, and need to be filled first, unlike the previous system, and provides greater personnel to do that, because 40% of all details have been going unfilled, which is leading to a lot of challenges and, frankly, a lot of overtime from the department directly paying for those. We also make some changes to medical leave.
In other words, so that if the department's not going to be paying for those anymore because they're going to go to other people, that will get paid by another entity.
Yeah,
okay.
Any of these, I'm going to go, if you're interested, I'll go all the way down the rabbit hole because these are quite significant. On the detail system, these are privately reimbursed, privately compensated shifts that are done by our officers off their clock, outside of their normal day. And what happens is the construction companies or the large event organizers will put in for an event permit, and if it's deemed that there's a security risk with traffic and et cetera, then they're required to have a detail for a certain number of officers on scene. Previously, only police officers could participate in these details, and because not many were, we didn't have that many available to fill all the shifts, many were just happening without any of that extra help. It was also the same rate of compensation for all details across the city, those on a very quiet side residential street in a neighborhood, or one that is very involved and actually quite risky. And so we do two things in evening out and changing the compensation structure and the priority structure of the details to say which ones really need to be filled first for public safety and traffic flow, and then open up the personnel that's available to include university police, other types of sworn officers who are not police officers, and also the opportunity for civilians to take part as well.
I don't want to belabor this too long. There's a lot of stuff, but I just want to mention the crimes that are going to be taken out of arbitration, allegations of murder, rape, kidnapping, drug trafficking, et cetera. They would not be in arbitration. But one of the complaints from like a civil rights lawyer, one of the names in the Globe Stories is Howard Friedman guy, points out that this does not include excessive force, which is one of the things I think a lot of people are very concerned about. So if a cop is accused of excessive force, then he would still go to an arbitration thing if Internal Affairs finds that he did something wrong. So those kinds of things are not going to be covered.
Wait a second. I thought if Internal Affairs did sustain a finding of excessive force, it would be precluded from arbitration. His point, I thought, was that rarely does that happen, a la the Captain Danilecki thing we've discussed with you ad nauseum.
I think there's two separate points there. Excessive force is not on the list of the 30-some violations that are now precluded from arbitration.
So even if you're found to have used excessive force by Internal Affairs, Margery's right, you can.
That's right.
Okay,
there's still a whole category of other offenses that we were not able to get onto this list in this first negotiation. And again, no police department in the country has been able to remove arbitration in any situation whatsoever. So this is a really, I think, a groundbreaking agreement that reflects the officers' overwhelming support and vote to ensure that we are publicly holding our force to these standards. The other point that was made in that article about the internal sustaining versus going to arbitration or going to court, there was this question about whether the Internal Affairs Department would actually go through all of the actions to hold someone accountable internally to result in the disciplinary action that could then be challenged in arbitration. The reality, though, is that we see this happen in departments everywhere, and we have seen this happen in Boston as well. What negotiated, the list of very serious offenses that are on there, unfortunately, this would have had an impact with several officers who were found to have evidence of internally to have found evidence of committing those offenses and or external action, and were then returned to the force as well. And so we know that this is going to make a difference, and we have more work to do, certainly, but we're very proud of the step that's been taken.
We want to get to calls. I just want to say, while you said that the mayor has gotten a lot of praise, and she has, the union agreed to this. So I think we should, since the Patrolmen's Association is often the subject of criticism by at least one of us, they agreed to this.
Well,
and I think they
I think
deserve some praise as well.
I guess. I think that it might have been nice if excessive force was in there as well. And one last thing, there were 5 officers that were fired this year that have come back through arbitration. Were any of these serious crimes?
I know that at least in the case of, I don't know all of the individual cases, but there's some, I will point out that sometimes when someone is returned, if you look back in the history, there were also other situations that would have been caught by this list.
Okay.
And so we know it will be impactful. And I agree with Jim that this is a huge deal that we reached this agreement
huge deal.
through across the bargaining table, first of all, and then with an overwhelming ratification vote by our officers. This, again, no other department has ever done this. It is a real public demonstration that the Boston Police Department intends to continue being the best in the country, and that includes recognizing the need for continuing to earn public trust.
Let's go, instead of going right to the calls, we have somebody who has a question here at the library. I don't know if I pronounce, Mano, is that how you pronounce your name?
Yes.
Thank you, Mano.
Yes,
You're
yes.
You're with the mayor. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Margery, Jim.
Hi.
Thanks for a great show as always. Mayor, well, thank you for making yourself accessible. I voted for you. I was really happy when you were elected because of where you stand in many issues, but also because of the message that your presence in City Hall sends to young girls, including my 12-year-old daughter. Thank you for that. Unfortunately, you do not have her vote right now. And being a 12-year-old girl, you understand that she probably don't have my vote either. She controls what's going on. So the exam school admissions policy directly excluded her from the school of her choice last year. And she wasn't alone. Many other kids were excluded, many of them economically disadvantaged, when the same exact policy gave 351 rich kids, that's according to BPS data, bonus points and admission to the exam schools. Now, a lot of pressure. My question, there's a question here, I promise, Jim. The question is the following. Superintendent Skipper is going to announce tomorrow night some changes to this admission policy after a lot of pressure from parents, advocates, and the school committee. Where do you stand? Do you support the changes of this policy to make it the equitable policy that was intended to be, or do you think it should stay the same?
Mano, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for raising the issue and for speaking up on behalf of not only your daughter, but many families who have concerns. And I really appreciate you taking the time to make sure that her voice matters and makes a difference. I will just say the superintendent and I, as with myself and all of our cabinet members, we always move in coordination. So we have been in close discussion and analysis of the data for the steps that she will be communicating to everyone. And I think that we owe the community an even larger analysis and report back. As you know, this has been a policy with many, many twists and turns. It was begun, the process to discuss this was begun now multiple years ago before our administration. And then even as it was finalized through the pandemic, the implementation of pieces of it were not possible because large tests could not be given in the middle of the public health crisis. And so it's kind of been here and there, and even though it feels like a very long time, we only have 1 year of data on the full policy being implemented because of all those different changes and things along the way slowly ramping up and being added in as the public health situation changed. Excuse me. And so there was concern about making drastic changes to a policy with only 1 year of data. Now, that is incredibly difficult because it is real students and families who are right at that point, and waiting another year, waiting 5 years as the policy requires, means that multiple classes of students will be potentially denied the benefit of any changes or tweaks that may happen. I support the need for all of our schools to reflect opportunity available to all of our young people, and for the improvements to our schools to ensure that we are creating equity across each one of our high schools. That is the driving push that we're making. that also means that each individual school's admissions processes need to feel fair, understandable, and that we're not creating unintentional situations to solve a larger challenge, which end up falling on a small number of people. And so I think, again, we'll see tomorrow the superintendent's announcement, and that will be one small step because we only have 1 year of data, but we are working very hard on a number of different things. One is to try to, for example, respond to the push from families who are interested in exam schools to issue the notification sooner than it has been in the past. We know that as families are making decisions about high school, traditionally, Boston Public Schools has been the very, very last to give a response on what your opportunities could be, and therefore you might have already needed to have those hard decisions or even made taken financial actions in a different way, and then it's too late or it just complicates things. So we want to help ease that burden a little bit where possible. It's quite complicated and we're still working on all of the many steps to do that, but we hear that as a priority in the very short term as well. And then the bigger picture is really getting into the data once there are multiple years of data and having a very honest and open conversation with the community about what is working, what is not working, what is achieving the initial aims that were laid out, and what needs to be adjusted from there. So I can promise you that this is something that is a constant topic of conversation within our administration, and that I stand very closely coordinated with the superintendent on what the future steps should be.
Mano, thank you for coming, and thank you for your question.
One quick follow-up. I don't know if this is what Miles was talking about, but I used to ask Marty Walsh this all the time when he was the mayor, that as you know, what happens sometimes is kids go to the Park School or they go to the Dexter School, they go to some very expensive private elementary school, then they come and test into, or try to test into the exam schools. I don't know why, if there are preferences for different things, there can't be a preference for kids coming from the public schools, because that would drive me nuts too if somebody went to some $50,000 a year school for 6 years and then transferred into Boston Latin.
In some ways, this is the issue that Mano's bringing up. So the basic shape of the changes to the enrollment process, which have been in place for a number of years now, but again, only recently fully implemented, are instead of the previous system, which had a test administered and then looking at your basically English/language arts and math grades for the year before, and then those were basically averaged together, and then you were just offered your place according to how you had prioritized the schools, and then the ranking of the combined score. The city had experience that had led to certain elementary schools not having representation at all within the exam school system, and the disparities within the invitation and then acceptance rates of Black and brown students, particularly at one of the exam schools, was quite stark. And so there was a move away from that specific test, which was not based on the BPS curriculum, and therefore you could really benefit from outside tutoring and the resources to participate in that. So we moved away to a new test, as well as, in addition to the grades and test component, having 8 socioeconomic tiers across Boston, and each of those categories having a certain allocation of seats equally and offered through rounds, so that we could guarantee representation across all socioeconomic backgrounds. However, the additional piece that gets a little bit at the issue that you're bringing up, Margery, is that certain schools are offered, or most of the schools in Boston's district are offered an additional 10 points added to your score if you are at a school with 40% or greater percentage of students at the poverty level receiving benefits.
So that's trying to balance that out.
So that gets at the public school issue, but there are a very small number of our elementary schools that are above that threshold or below that threshold, and therefore do not get the points even as a Boston public school. We could not legally defend a rule that would only preference Boston public schools versus other locations that students were coming from. And so that was a little bit of a proxy, but it's having some additional consequences that have been quite stressful and don't seem to make sense in every case for a small number of students.
Let's go back to the phones. 877-301-8970 to call or text. Dr. Mitchell in JP, you're on with the mayor. Welcome.
Well, hi, Mayor Wu. We're very happy to have you as our mayor, first of all. I have two issues that I'd like to bring up. Not quite as important as the issues you've been discussing, but one is the development going on in the Fenway. And I guess it's sort of a quality of life issue. The traffic issue through the Fenway is horrendous. And there doesn't seem to be a master plan that I can see. And there seems to be also no enforcement of traffic rules in the area, and trucks and cars parking, double park, triple park, getting through the area is horrendous. And the second issue, somewhat related, is the Jamaica Way and Arbor Way. There seems to be no enforcement of heavy trucks passing through the area, and it's become a big safety issue that I can perceive over the years, and there seems to be, again, no enforcement at all.
Doctor,
and I hope.
no, we got
I
it.
hope
I
you can.
think
okay.
she's going to address both. Doctor, thank you much for your call. Mayor.
Thank you. There's a couple pieces to what you're raising, which are issues that we hear from many, many residents in that area, and as a key corridor in the city, many who are passing through. There are a couple moving parts in terms of new developments that have been proposed and others, and we have some priorities as we think about the growth in the Fenway area in particular. One is that with such a treasure in the Muddy River and the Fens, the impact of shadow and how we set consistent, clear policies around that is really important, and we've been working on that as we work through the proposals that are there, including some to help provide more resources to the anchor institutions in the area, such as the universities. Another piece is, as you point out, the traffic flow is not where it should be, and there are some key corridors that, or for example, the Charles Gate area, the on-ramps, this and that aren't quite working well, and we have in the planning process some transportation projects, sometimes in coordination with other levels of government, to be able to very much improve the flow in that area. We also know that we need to have more civic space in the Fenway neighborhood. It's a little bit of a distance away from downtown, but as a neighborhood itself, it does not have the same level of amenities and sort of public, community, civic, city-owned space, and so we've been working to address that as we think about development in addition. But all of those have to fit together, and there are some key next steps with major decisions being made about developments and about the transportation corridor. And so I hope that we will see the improvements on that very soon.
Doctor, thanks for the call. If you had time this morning to happen to read who the Globe named as Bostonians of the Year.
I just saw a quick look. That should be Bostonians of every year.
So,
every year.
And they are the beleaguered MBTA commuters. The mayor, if you're not watching on streaming, is smiling. So speaking
highlighted as one of those, a woman who apparently, Nicole Morello, who went down to the Red Line with a placard around her neck saying, "We deserve a better tea."
We don't need to choose anymore in future years. It's going to be the MBTA commuters forever.
Phil Lang was kind enough to spend an hour actually taking questions from people. It was wonderful. On Friday, one of the things we broached with him is your free bus pilot program, which I believe expires in March. We asked him about that. What happens after March? Here's what Philip Lang had to say. How about continuing free bus service on those routes post-March? Is that something you're contemplating? What are you going to say to her?
We're open to that. We're talking with the city with regards to that. So
Is your expectation that it will continue post-March?
I believe that's the intention.
So what is going to happen post-March to the free bus routes? And in a related thing, it sounds like low-income, at least some means-tested fares, are in the offing quite soon. Could you speak to both, if you don't mind?
Yeah, and I'll toss a third issue in there as well that are about this interplay of how to get more people onto public transit by taking down the barriers. We hope to continue this. We're working with the MBTA. Currently, the City of Boston is providing funding to replace the level of rider fares that had previously been collected on the 3 bus lines that are now the highest ridership of any in the city along a key economic corridor, and have been without financial barriers for some time now. So we intend to find the city resources to continue that and want to keep working. I hear from other municipalities in the area all the time about wanting to partner and tackle some of the bus routes that cross municipal boundaries, and there's a couple that we had been working on, and so we hope to keep following up with the T on that. Low-income fare would be a great step forward. It was wonderful that the legislature passed a pilot and put some funding behind it, and that the Secretary of Transportation, Secretary Monica Tibbetts-Nutt, saw the need to not just treat this as funding for another extended study, but to get going and to acknowledge that we know it works and we know this will open up opportunity and mobility for everyone. So eager to see what they release in terms of who will be eligible and how quickly that can get going. The third issue I want to raise on this, again, in the vein of all of traffic is connected to the MBTA's reliability and our commuters' willingness and trust in choosing that option. We know for a fact that as the MBTA has become less reliable, traffic has gone up. And it is many people I hear all the time from folks who were long time commuters on the T who now simply cannot make it to work with reliability given how long the wait times are between trains or buses, or between how long the rides are themselves. And so every step that we take to invest in public transit is a benefit for traffic flow as well. It's really the only way to sustainably fix our traffic situation. And so there's really low-hanging fruit in the MBTA system on our commuter rail system. There are folks who live close enough to hop on the commuter rail at this point among all of the modes of public transit, bus, subway, commuter rail. The commuter rail is the most reliable way. It's the fastest often. However, the fares are different than on the other lines. And in Boston, for example, 3 of our outer neighborhoods have to pay commuter rail fares that are up to 3 times as expensive as a subway fare just to get to jobs or where they're going downtown and around the city. That would be a very quick way. If we were to, like other cities do, count every city's commuter rail fares in one pricing zone and make sure that that is compatible in Boston with the MBTA, with the subway pricing, we would open up hundreds of people now in Hyde Park, West Roxbury, Rosendale, able to afford to choose a monthly pass on the commuter rail rather than driving and trying to find parking and all of that contributing to traffic. And so the city of Boston has a big role to play in eliminating all of the slow zones across the city. Every time the green line or the red line or any line is shut down, our transportation department, funded by taxpayers across all of the city, including those excluded commuter rail neighborhoods, fund the mitigation so that people can move on the surface, on surface roads more quickly with shuttle buses and other adjustments to the lane allocations and other things. And so we've been asking for strong partnership from the T in a continued way. I think Phil Eng is just a godsend for all of us. His expertise, his creativity, his patience, his organizational leadership, and I'm really confident that we can help support him by making some of these tweaks to keep making the T more accessible and therefore fix traffic. It's a hard conversation right now because we know every transit agency is looking at a fiscal cliff with federal funds from the pandemic drying up a little bit. We have to rethink how we fund this, but the short term, I don't know the exact English phrase about penny for pound, penny foolish.
We had a problem with that the other day. Penny wise, pound foolish.
Foolish. That's it, yeah.
And so by keeping commuter rail fares way out of reach, we're actually punishing ourselves by creating more traffic unnecessarily.
We're talking to the mayor of the city of Boston. She's going to be with us at the top of the hour. The number is 877-301-8970. If you want to call or text, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back, that is. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7, GBH, broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, streaming on youtube.com/GBH News and facebook.com/GBH News.
This week on The Big Dig.
The Zachem Bridge has become a beloved icon of Boston, but once it was the most controversial piece of the entire Big Dig.
Building a bridge to carry them to the other side of the river, putting them in a loop, and building another bridge to take them back to where they came from.
Didn't make a lot of sense to a lot of people.
I literally thought somebody had just scribbled on a page.
The Big Dig, tonight at 9 on GBH 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And Newport Mansions. Visitors can see the houses where HBO's acclaimed series The Gilded Age was filmed. The Breakers, Rosecliff, The Elms, and Marble House are open for tours through the holidays. NewportMansions.org. And Bridgewater State University, committed to providing a quality education and ranked as the 18th Massachusetts college on the Wall Street Journal's 2024 Best Colleges in America list. Learn more at bridgew.edu.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. I'm Jim Braude. She is Margery Eagan. We're broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News, facebook.com/GBH News. We're in the middle of Ask the Mayor with Boston's Mayor Michelle Wu. She's kind enough to join us once a month, and she'll be with us for about another 28 or 29 minutes at 877-301-8970. So one of the owners of Mamelos will be with us in a few minutes, gave you something.
A jelly donut, thank you.
And I rudely said to you, don't you have anything for us, as you always do? And the answer was yes.
I happen to have gifts. So the show and tell for this month is beautiful art pieces from the local hand.
Ooh.
They are one of our space grant recipients. So this is a brand new business that we were able to help support with the City of Boston's program to ensure that our businesses can open up throughout our neighborhood. So the owner very generously has wanted to make sure that I don't know the color preferences of your homes or offices or whatever, but I will leave both of these to you,
Very
and
kind.
along with some information on Michaela, who is the owner and artist.
Local hand.
That's right, in Dorchester.
You know, before we get back to questions, well, this is actually a question. State of the city, since we're talking so much about the future, there's no date, or there is a date?
There is a date.
Oh, thank you, Mayor Wu. That is my preference,
Thank you.
actually. I love
Well,
it.
actually, I want Marjorie's. Can I?
No, you
I'm
can't.
kidding. Go ahead. When is the State of the City?
January
Mayor?
9th in the evening. We'll be back at the MGM.
Great.
They have lots of space, beautiful venue, and we're eager to share some of the updates on what we've been working on over the last year as a report back, and also what we can look forward to in 2024.
Fabulous. 877-301-8970.
You know, we talk about the housing shortage and the cost of housing around here. Two exciting things, the old Y on Clarendon Street, some plans for the West End affordable housing. The Shattuck plans are kind of shrinking, I guess, from what they originally were. But tell us about housing updates.
This continues to be the most pressing issue for residents everywhere, and we are trying on all fronts to make sure that we're putting resources to housing. It's in the individual projects, including some that you mentioned. Everywhere, the West End, for example, is the library project, a very sort of short, small building that needed renovation as a library structure. And so in partnership with David Leonard and our wonderful Boston Library team, we are redeveloping that space to the most modern and beautiful for as a library, and then adding affordable housing on top. In fact, Boston has the ability to build and then have the federal government fund certain types of public housing units, and so that will be incorporated into that project. We're also looking at large parcels of land that the city owns, like the parking lots across from the water and sewer building, or parking lots in Chinatown and in Charlestown, and we are partnering to fund affordable developments wherever we can, and also to update our zoning code so that we can ensure there's more predictability for housing growth across our neighborhoods too.
It says, what's 140 slots at the Clarendon Street Y?
100, right?
Yeah, I think that's the address.
Yeah,
140 Clarendon.
140 Clarendon.
It's somewhere in that universe also. And these are, it's run by the Pine Street Inn, an incredible partnership that required a lot of creativity in putting together the financing across all levels of government and local community partners. And it's, especially this time of year, the ability to see that project really fill up and have people celebrate the holidays, and as the weather grows cold, have a nice, warm home. This is what we wish for every Bostonian, and we still have work to do.
So, Mary, if you're ready in a second, we're going to get to you in 30 seconds. Just get by the mic. In the interim, Lois from Mission Hill has my favorite question for the mayor, I believe. Lois, welcome to the show. How are you? Lois. Hello, Lois.
here.
There she
here
is. I'm sorry, that's my mistake. Hi, Lois. What's your question for the mayor?
Hi. Okay, my question is partly reflective of the gentleman who called from Fenway, namely, we note that we have no master plan either in Mission Hill, and that we have a lot of traffic congestion, but partly due to the developers who apparently are very hungry and are nipping at our heels at all moments. We have the misfortune of being between two subway stations, even though, or lines, even though they're about 8 or 9 long blocks apart, and up one hill and down the other to get from one to the other if you want to go by both. We have.
Hey, Lois, what
pressure.
happened to what you said to the call screener? You wanted to know why local issues are settled by the state and not the city.
Yes.
How about that one?
Yes. Okay. Yes.
Go ahead.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Lately, I have heard on the radio, possibly on this program,
I think so,
that some of these decisions about taller buildings that are much higher than anything else in the neighborhood have been the decision by the state laws of
rather than the
zoning,
city, right? We got
instead of city, yeah, right. And I'd like to know whether that is true.
Lois, thank you for the call.
Thank you. And I would say same thing applies as we talked about Fenway, Mission Hill in terms of traffic flow and wanting to make sure we have a clear way to coordinate all the pieces of that. In terms of buildings being taller because of the state, the ways in which, anyway, the state does have way too much say over much that Boston does. We do our best to partner with them wherever we can, and our local delegation works really hard to represent the city among the voices of all all across the Commonwealth. The state controls the building code, and they had not updated that in some time until very recently. So last year they released some updates to that reflected more energy efficiency requirements, and that has been a huge success. Boston has opted into the most stringent version of that since it became available. But by and large, most of how tall a building is and the built environment tends to fall to cities, except for the building code. So I unfortunately may be the one to blame for an issue if you're thinking about that particular one. But there are many other places where we can engage the state, but that one I think may be on the city.
Lois, thank you for your call. Mary?
Mary at the libraries. Homie Mike here. Hi, Mary.
Hi. Jim and Margery, thank you very much. It's great to be here, that you give us the opportunity, and I listen to your show all the time.
That's very nice. Thank you.
I live in Brighton. I've lived there for 35 years. And last March, my neighbors paved their garden, extending their driveway without a permit. And now the water, when it rains, accumulates at the bottom of their driveway and floods my basement. I filed a complaint with ISD, which resulted in a violation, saying that they needed to fix the grade and install a berm, or they were going to have to remove it. My neighbor is a plumber, and he knows everybody down at ISD, and he made the violation disappear. There's been no enforcement of what ISD wanted them to do. I've tried talking to lots of people, and the last person I've talked to is my city councilor, and she's basically said that I would have to sue the city to get the city to enforce its own code. And I don't have enough money to sue the city. I was wondering what you could do to help fix that.
Thank you for coming, Mary, and I'm sorry you've had to go through all of that, and I appreciate you highlighting it for me. Why don't I follow up and understand the specifics of the situation? I know Councilor Braden is fantastic and probably has a pretty good handle of the situation, so there might be something that I'm not necessarily aware of, which is driving this. We need to have consistency and fairness. We should not in any way have a system where someone's personal connections can influence things, so I want to be sure that I understand what's been going on here. The issue about stormwater and how one parcel's decisions impact everyone else is one that we are thinking about taking action on very much. We have a green infrastructure department whose responsibility is to try to find whatever ways, whether it's sidewalks and public space or supports for development decisions in order to try to divert as much stormwater away from our pipe system as possible. As rainstorms become more intense, we saw in Leominster over the summer just how much these kind of flash flood situations can happen, and that is a function of the weather now being, the precipitation now coming down much more intensely than our pipes are designed for. And in a city as old and built out as Boston, we can't just rip up all the pipes and replace them with bigger ones. For those one-off situations where the storms take place, we need to find ways to divert and hold that water through what's called the gray infrastructure system sometimes. And there are changes that are moving forward, for example, with the Water and Sewer Department rethinking how they are adjusting their fees and their financing to have stormwater very prominently separated out in order to then be able to give credits to residents who have more permeable pavement. So those who are wanting to go the other direction in removing pavement from their driveway and replacing it with gravel or more porous material, they can actually get credits off of their water bill to recognize the fact that they're then helping us absorb more water instead of diverting it into the pipes, which then cost money to treat and deal with and prevent flooding. So there's some things happening under the surface, literally, to try to work on all of that.
Mary, if you give your contact information to Hannah, we'll transfer it to the mayor's office, if you would. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. You know, Mayor, there was a story in Commonwealth Beacon, which used to be Commonwealth Magazine, it's now Commonwealth Beacon, talking about newly released data that indicated there was more than 1,600 substantiated cases, I'm reading from it, of sexual misconduct, bullying, and bias-based incidents that occurred at Boston public schools in the last 2 years. The piece goes on to say, but Boston school officials are refusing to release details about the individual incidents with identifying information redacted, despite being ordered to do so by the state supervisor of public records. What's your response to what they wrote?
We need to ensure that any possible concern related to these very serious issues, bullying, harassment, anything that's taking place in our schools is very carefully documented, and that we are keeping track of what's happening. I haven't been briefed on the specifics there in terms of where the conflict is, but I know in many cases there's additional push for privacy of those who are reporting or might be involved when it comes to such sensitive cases of sexual harassment or assault or situations regarding children. So I will look into that more. I don't have the details specifically on what the conflict might be. Oftentimes when we see a letter come back from the state supervisor of records, it can be just saying we need to provide a fuller explanation of why certain records were being withheld, rather than just saying you need to put out the individual name. It can be very difficult to protect privacy, even with redacting individual names, when a school community is small and there's other details and this and that. So it's definitely a balance. We see this on the public safety side as well, that there are extra legal protections that exempt certain records from being fully open to the public, in order to ensure that anyone who might be reporting an incident doesn't feel that their information could end up, through public records law, unintentionally becoming public and therefore threatening their privacy. So I will sort that out, but I don't know, I'm not familiar with that specific interaction.
We're talking to the mayor, Mayor Wu. She's available to you too at 877-301-8970.
Bethany in Jamaica Plain, thank you for calling.
Hey, Bethany. Bethany?
I was hoping that Mayor Wu could speak about the Shattuck redevelopment that's supposedly going to happen over the next few years in area that is defined as Mattapan. There's been very limited public engagement around it. It was originally supposed to be 75 to 100 beds was my understanding. And then the BMC came in with a big proposal for 850 beds and some of its permanent supportive housing. That site is supposed to be for public health, not housing. And now there's an article in the paper saying that the project is going to be shrunk to some degree, as you guys already noted on the program. but we're already seeing impacts of like a huge uptick in the number of 311 calls that are going in to report needles being strewn about. We see people actively shooting up in Franklin Park, and from residents that we believe are coming from these little cottages that were supposed to be temporary, and now a year and a half later they're still there.
So Bethany, what's your question for the mayor, if I may? What's your question for the mayor?
Would the mayor support an effort to halt and restart the redevelopment plans, restart the public engagement process around the Shattuck, because the neighborhood's only just starting to learn about what's happening, and it seems like a travesty in the works.
Bethany, thank you.
Thank you. This has been again, there are many processes that have now sort of overlapped throughout the pandemic and multiple political transitions, and involve lots of different entities. This one is one of those pretty complex situations. The RFP was first put out, and there was processes many, many years ago, and then responses came back, and then there was only one response that was made to this particular site. This is a state parcel and a state project, and so the city we are following this, but this is not somewhere where we have direct oversight over the decisions that are being made here. But we're working very closely because as Boston plans out our public health campus on Long Island, we need to ensure that everything else that is happening in the area is complementary. And our Long Island plans have really been moving forward since the RFP process kicked off, and so there's sort of been multiple strands now that we need to pull together. I will say that what we hear across every neighborhood, what we see in terms of the numbers and the growing pervasiveness of the opiate crisis, is we need more supports in more places. And so every possible spot where there is public health resources, it's a very, very big cost to lose that, and would need to be carefully planned. And so the push to ensure that we are providing real modernized facilities in order to accommodate the uses that have long been there, that is something that we as a city are trying to ensure doesn't get lost in the larger conversation. We do need to have quality of life protections and resources available, and I definitely hear that Franklin Park has to be a priority area there. As we've been able to take steps forward on Mass and Cass and see the encampments shut down and everyone connected to housing and services, there have been more city resources available and our community partners resources available to then provide mobile outreach for those who need support in all the other parts of the city, not just standing and waiting at Mass and Cass because everything is so dire there. And so now that situation has very dramatically shifted, we've been able to deploy more resources in a more reliable way elsewhere, and we know we still have work to do in Franklin Park. There's been a large community-driven action plan for the park in general that we hope to see some major progress on as well, because we need to make the most use of this park outside of that particular parcel in addition. So we're going to stay very closely involved, and particularly in coordinating the Long Island planning with what's moving forward here, but the city's not really driving this conversation, and so far there's still a lot of open questions around the funding sources, where it will end up, who will be involved in which particular needs that are being served there, as we map out what's happening on the island.
Bethany, thank you much for the call. We appreciate it.
You're talking about supportive housing at the Shattuck. I was surprised that the Boston Public Health Commission has paid $2.3 million just this year through November. This was the story in November for private security at Mass and Cass, where the tents had been for quite some time. That's the city, right? So the cops need reinforcements. Is that the problem?
There have been many organizations. Just yesterday, I met with some of the representatives of businesses in South Bay just to do a review and hear from everyone on how things were going and what their concerns were headed into this or in the middle of this holiday shopping season. And we see that the large, long-standing previous encampments and gatherings at Mass and Cass really did have impacts beyond the area, and
This would be
many
the mall
organizations.
in South Bay with
the mall in South
Yep.
Bay, the Greater Boston Food Bank, the
Yep.
Boston Public Health Commission. There was need for additional resources
Yeah.
to ensure public safety for the employees and workers in the area. And so, again, I can't overstate how important it is, in how impactful it is in many different ways that we have turned the corner on that dynamic. We have a lot more to do in making sure that we can sustain and keep up the progress that we have seen. And of the residents who had been housed coming out of the encampments, there have been a number, 22 or so people who had not accepted a placement that was made available. The team has not relented in following up and staying connected with every single one of the people who needed supports. And even on that list of 22, 17 people have now been connected with a placement and are on a good track to find the supports that they need. And we continue to work even on those last 5 individuals and ensuring that we can stay as coordinated as possible in providing supports.
You know, prior to you, for Ask the Mayor, we had asked the Attorney General, and the Attorney General commented on a story in the Boston Herald midweek, which said, the end of last week, which said a man is accused of distributing crystal meth and fentanyl out of a Mattapan house that's located 2 doors down from where Massachusetts AG Andrea Campbell lives. She says it's actually not 2 doors, it's right next door. And she said, her words were, "I've often felt my neighborhood is over-policed and underprotected." She said as a city councilor, when you were both serving together, she complained about not only drug trafficking, but she believes human trafficking next door. Nothing happened. The state police are the ones who did this. She said in the 4 years, the vast majority of which was not under your leadership, obviously, but your predecessors, the Boston police have never investigated the concerns there. Less asking this question about the Attorney General, because obviously she can fend for herself, but an average person living in Boston who is in the exact same situation she's in, if she can't get action as a city councilor and Attorney General, what do you say to a ordinary citizen who faces a situation like this?
I can't speak for what happened before under previous administrations and under different transitions, but our mission under this administration and this police administration under Commissioner Michael Cox is to ensure that we are as closely partnered with community members as possible. We need to be earning the trust of our residents in order to deliver safety for everyone. And that means not only being present at neighborhood associations where hopefully we could learn of and identify these types of issues across everyone, not just those who are in elected office, but to have connection points and to have the relationships broadly where anyone feels comfortable and supported in reaching out to make those claims. And so we very much encourage anyone who needs support or has a concern to reach out directly to either their local police captain or community service officer in that area, or please elevate it and find opportunities. Commissioner Cox has made it a trademark of his to personally be out as well, and he now has taken what used to be confidential internal information through what's called our CompStat program, where they analyze the statistics across every part of the city. It includes some sensitive information in there. He made a point of adopting a version of that with proper privacy protections and names redacted and different things amended so that it could be publicly shared, and they continue to do that precisely to encourage residents to participate and to get involved. And there have been numerous changes where it's not only that these public CompStat sessions are for the public to learn about what's happening, but in fact our officers get better ideas, specific situations and or strategies and trends that community members know most of all, because they are living this every single day, and we need to rely on that if we want to be the safest city in America.
We have a couple more minutes with Michelle Wu, the mayor of Boston. The number is 877-301-8970. Tell us about this community choice electricity rate program, which, at least according to this State House news story, is going to offer rates at least for 7 months lower than Eversource does in the city.
This is a push that I was very proud to be part of on the city council, and took many, many years, but we finally have a city-run electricity program which guarantees better sourcing in terms of renewable energy, a higher sourcing than is required by state law, and a thorough vetting of the providers. And so this is an opportunity for anyone in Boston who wants to switch up to more renewable energy to do so through a trusted source rather than through some of the third-party suppliers who can be quite predatory and actually end up scamming people. We needed to provide a trusted public source. And in fact, as we've been saying all along, going green also means saving money, because we are able to benefit from some of the contracts that are set in a different way than the standard default electricity plans. And so the Community Choice Electricity Program, you can access it on the city website. The pricing is in different periods of time, about 6 months at a time, and the pricing for this next period is lower than the default utilities, and so you can support green energy while also, more importantly, saving some dollars that goes right back to your household budget.
Why don't we end this session with Rich? Are you here, Rich? Rich, where are you? Run. Sorry. Rich is at the mic at the library. He has a question for the mayor. Welcome, Rich.
Mayor Wu. I'm an employee of REI, so I'm really happy that you have the support for getting kids outdoors. And I can't remember the name of the program, but I'm just wondering how successful it's been.
Thank you. I'm a proud co-op member myself and very much enjoy the philosophy of making sure that everybody shares in the benefits of the great outdoors. We have a Connect, Learn, and Explore program, and the idea is that every child growing up in the city of Boston should have every resource in the world, and we want to focus on 5 areas of learning how to bike, knowing how to swim, being involved in the arts, playing youth sports, and getting your hands dirty in the dirt, growing and being involved in nature. And so there's been a number of initiatives launched on each one of those: free bike lessons, equipment, opportunities for youth sports that we'll keep building on as we look to renovate White Stadium and really invest in Boston Public Schools athletics. And we saw a lot of wonderful growth happening over the summer with these programs. My goal is that we also find a way to really transition Boston to fully be a winter city. I grew up in an environment that, in Chicago, was you just, the snow is the snow, the cold is the cold, and I think we need to do a lot more to make it so that people have outdoor spaces that are, can have a heat lamp or opportunities still to get together and take advantage of what it means in all seasons, including in the winter, and to make it a city where our young people feel comfortable outdoors all throughout the year.
Rich, thanks. Since you mentioned White Stadium, you have a minute left. We had the 3 women who were behind the National Women's Soccer League bringing it to Boston, which is great. It's going to be in White Stadium. The city's doing tens of millions of dollars. They're throwing in millions of dollars. It sounds like a lot of wonderful things are going to be developed there that were in need. But there's a story, I think it was in the Globe, my apologies, I don't have it in front of me, saying that the high school football teams, 7 or 10, whatever there are going to be precluded from using it. What happens to them?
We are going to ensure that every possible use that has been at White Stadium has a space in the city. The vast majority of those uses will stay at White Stadium and have an enhanced opportunity. Football will be able to play after the soccer season is over, and so we'll still have the kind of marquee end-of-year championship games there, and hope to then, give them the chance to play in this amazing world-class stadium for that opportunity. But for practices and for some of those other spaces, we are going to look to renovate other fields and make those available.
Can I keep you 45 seconds extra and just ask you one last question? We asked the attorney. You were 4 years old when Carol Stewart was killed, and obviously the Globe has done 2 years of research. We had Adrian Walker on the other day, one of the principal reporters, and he's doing the podcast. You were obviously a kid. You didn't live here at the time. You mentioned Chicago. What as the mayor and as somebody who has grown here, what's your takeaway? What's your takeaway from the series?
It can be easy to say, oh, it's, we're a totally different city now, everything looks different, and we had a couple calls about Mission Hill that were not at all about public safety. It was actually about development and traffic and too many people being in there. I would just say that Boston's history still lives with us very much. It's very much alive, and all you have to do is have any number of small conversations with Bostonians who were in Boston at that period, particularly in our Black and brown communities, not just in Mission Hill, but throughout the city, to still feel the hurt, the pain, the trauma of that experience. I think the series does a good job. I finally got to catch up and now watched both of the episodes that came out and read through the entire series. And it does a good job of showing how this was, in fact, a commentary of how fractured and barely holding it together, that sort of racial dynamics and the peace that maybe was, the slowing of the outright violence leading up to that, coming out off of busing and so much that the city lived through in so many different ways. It was very tenuous, and that incident was much more than just about the police report and what happened. I mean, it's one family's trauma that snowballed into an entire city's trauma that we still very much feel today. And so there has been tremendous progress. I am very grateful to be in an administration and a city and a community that I hope we would see multiple checkpoints where something like that would not happen again. And there have been specific legal changes and leadership changes. But we need to remember what our history has been and how much it is still impacting our residents today.
Mayor Wu, can't thank you enough for your time. We really
thank
appreciate
you very
it.
much.
Thank you. Happy
Joining us.
holidays.
Merry Christmas.